Luca stuttered through heaving sobs. Iggy gave Luca a solid smack on the back of his head. Luca wiped his eyes with a sleeve. Iggy flashed a mischievous smile and cracked his knuckles. Iggy and Luca shared a skeptical look. Iggy darted behind a large pine and began digging furiously. He emerged holding a shoebox with a crude skull painted on its lid. Luca rolled his eyes with realization. Iggy stifled a chuckle. Iggy triumphantly raised the shoebox. Luca and Iggy inched up to the edge of the hole with bewilderment in their eyes. Arctic air breathed out of the cavern in heaving gusts. Mr. Kerr gazed down the abyss in contemplation. Kerr scratched the back of his head. His face contorted into a saccharine grin. Kerr snapped his fingers. Iggy turned to Luca with a sly glance. Iggy waved the box into the air, threatening to drop it down the hole. Iggy plucked a single bottle rocket from the box and held it up with reverence. After a long pause, Mr. Kerr flung up his hand with frustration. Mr. Kerr sighed into the frigid air. With a nonchalant flick, Iggy tossed the firework into the hole. With a growl, Kerr leapt at Iggy, crashing through Luca. Iggy tried to twist away, but in the struggle they both tumbled over the side. Luca dove forward, bracing Iggy's hand just before it slipped. His grip was made precarious by the cold, wet snow. He could see Kerr further down, clinging to Iggy's coat. Mr. Kerr gasped with insult. With a wild look in his eye, Mr. Kerr began to hum a proud melody. Luca's hand began to cramp. His voice began to crack. Luca felt Iggy loosen his grasp. Every muscle in Luca's body burned. Luca felt his hand slipping. A calm settled over Iggy's face. Iggy's voice was colder than the bitter air billowing from the chasm. Luca had no choice but to accept Iggy's request. With a quiet blink, Luca watched a teardrop sail down into the howling void. As his fingers slowly gave up, he met eyes with Iggy. The two silhouettes were swallowed by darkness. We have some idea what that would look like. A fierce twinkle flashed in Nat's eyes. With a chuckle, Nat turned and walked west. Dumbfounded, Luca followed behind him, trudging through the snow. Every step taking him further away from everyone and everything he knew. And to be continued in Beacon Pines, Pines Harder. Revenge served cold. Second time's a charm? Wait, that's it? This ends with a crummy cliffhanger just when it was getting good? I was even starting to like Iggy. No way. I refuse to be associated with some never-ending parade of sequels. Let's go back and find something more definitive. Luca had no choice but to refuse Iggy's request. He tightened his grip and reached for the walkie-talkie in his pocket. A wild delight crept onto Mr. Kerr's face. That's That's a good lad. Now, radio for help. Iggy begged Luca with his eyes one last time, but Luca pressed the button and called out, We need help. Mr. Kerr is in danger. It wasn't long before they were once again surrounded by clipboards. Mr. Kerr sighed with relieved frustration. There you are. You really are a worthless lot, aren't you? Mirror, now. A clipboard dutifully produced an ornate ivory hand mirror, and Mr. Kerr began preening his tousled hair. Ah, that's better. Mr. Van Horn, I applaud your sharp thinking under duress. I'll put in a good word for you with the founder. Take them away. A swarm of hands overpowered Luca. The last thing he saw before a cloth bag was pulled over his head was the defeated look on Iggy's face. The end. I think this was one of those times where doing the right thing was the wrong thing. And in the stillness, he began to hum. After the death of his father, Luca had trouble sleeping. Each night, his mother would sit at the foot of his bed and hum a gentle melody. It was the only thing that could calm his mind. The only thing that, however briefly, could make it all seem okay. That melody pervaded every memory Luca had of his mother. Shivering in the raw snow, he began to hum it out loud. Gran lowered the torch, listening closely. As recognition slowly set in, her heart sank. Those countless nights of consolation, the incomparable loss they shared together. She let the torch fall to the snow and sizzle out. A few steps toward Luca was all she could bear before dropping to the snow herself. Through a flood of tears, she began to hum along, note for note. Luca lifted his head in astonishment. The last time he heard that melody was the last night he saw his mother. Watery eyes, trying to see more clearly. He could just make out the impression of a familiar face. He peered across the snowscape at the woman on her knees. Something about her was undeniably his mother, only smaller, older, Jane. Luca sprinted as fast as he could toward his mother. They held each other close, and the cold retreated from their bodies. Eleanor looked down at Luca, tightening her embrace in an appeal for forgiveness. Joseph slumped into the cold, wet snow. For the first time in a long time, her voice felt like her own again. Luca gazed down at Nuncreed with pity. He looked small. Joseph stared into the snow, as if searching it for answers. Chapter 9. The Devil You Know. 7 months ago. Eleanor Van Horn crept down the maze of sterile hallways under perennial harvest. She stopped in front of the large steel door marked Deep Engineering. No turning back now. She raised a trembling hand. The stolen keycard worked as promised, and the door buzzed open with mechanical efficiency. She was immediately hit with the smell of disinfectant. It was some sort of laboratory. In one corner was a desk covered in papers. Across the room stood a tall metal pod with hoses protruding from its base. She rushed to the desk and began shifting through the piles of papers. They were experiment reports on something called Tempus liquamen. There were dozens of them, every one stamped failed. Eleanor heard the sharp echo of footsteps approaching. She was out of time. Her eyes scanned the room, eventually landing on the strange pod. Muttering a curse under her breath, she dashed over and dove inside. Mr. Kerr addressed the crowd with a sarcastic tone. Whispers filtered through the crowd. Torment dragged on Joseph Nuncreed's face. He paused for a moment, plucking a piece of fuzz from his sweater and discarding it to the ground. Kerr gave a bow of deference. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Solomon pulled a glass vial from his pocket. In one smooth motion, he downed its contents. A triumphant smile grew across Solomon's lips. His body and face began to contort and expand as he disappeared into a belching green. A hushed horror gripped the crowd. This is a story about change. Sharper examined his new hands. Sharper choked out a crude squawk of a laugh. Frustrated grumbles sprinkled through the crowd. William Kerr gave a subtle nod to the clipboards. A helpless quiet settled over the crowd.